Okay, for the record, this is going to be position 19, State of Georgia versus Anthony Richard Bruce. Mr. Bruce is charged in warrant number 2022 WA 06960 with committing the offense of violation of Georgia Controlled Substance Act. He's also charged in warrant number 2022 WA 06961 with committing a violation of Georgia Controlled Substance Act. Mr. Bruce is charged in warrant number 2022 WA 06962 with also committing a violation of Georgia Controlled Substance Act. And Mr. Bruce is charged in warrant number 2022 WA 06963 with violation of Georgia Controlled Substance Act. Mr. Bruce is charged in warrant number 2022 WA 06964 with possession of a weapon during the commission of a crime. Mr. Bruce is charged in warrant number 2022 WA 06965 with committing the offense of possession of firearm by a convicted felon or first offender probation. Mr. Bruce is charged in warrant number 2022 WA 06966 with possession of firearm by a convicted felon or first offender who's on probation, and he's charged in warrant number 2022 WA 06967 with committing the offense of tampering with evidence. Mr. Bruce is present in court here today. He's being represented by Mr. Rogers. The state is being represented by Ms. Freeman. Ms. Freeman, you can swear your witness in and present your case.
Thank you, Your Honor. Detective, would you raise your right hand, please? Do you swear and affirm that the testimony about to provide in the matter of State of Georgia versus Anthony Bruce will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God?
I swear.
Thank you. Please tell us your name and how you're employed.
Texas Badging with the Clayton County Police Department.
How long have you worked with the Clayton County Police Department?
Since August of 2013.
Were you working with the Clayton County Police Department on April 22nd of 2022?
Yes.
And on that particular day, were you part of officers who executed a search warrant at 3963 Joanne Court in Forest Park, Georgia?
Yes.
Is that in Clayton County?
Yes.
Do you know who their residence belong to?
The residence actually belongs to, it's not Mr. Bruce. The residence actually belongs to a Robert Longuepie. Okay. And he rents the residence out.
Was Mr. Bruce one of the persons named on the lease?
I'm not sure. I just know the room out because this gentleman rents rooms out to different people.
Okay. And who all resided at this residence?
Mr. Bruce, Mr. Longuepie, Mr. Ariala, Mr. Brown, Mr. Ledbetter, and Mrs. Finkley were all there that day.
Did you find any identifying information of Mr. Bruce in the residence?
Is it okay if I look at my report for a second?
Do you need to review your report to refresh your recollection?
Yes.
Okay. Attorney Rogers, do you have an objection?
No, you got them to say the magic words.
Go ahead, Detective.
Okay. Okay. So on the inventory list, there is nothing that we took from the location, but I do remember seeing a title to the vehicle that had his name on it, but we didn't take it, so I'm not 100% sure.
Okay. When you went into the residence, were you able to determine which room or bedroom belonged to Mr. Bruce?
Yes, it would be the bottom downstairs room when you go in through the back door straight through.
How were you able to determine that that room belonged to Mr. Bruce?
Because he was in that room when the SWAT team actually went in. He was actually hiding close to the bed where that bucket of bleach was.
Was anyone else inside of this particular bedroom when the search warrant was executed?
To my knowledge, no, but I'm not sure when the SWAT team first went in if there was anybody there in that specific room. But Mr. Bruce was found in that room by the SWAT team.
And Detective, if you could tell us what was located in that room.
It was all in a bucket of bleach next to the bed. It was, well, most of it, approximately 83 grams of marijuana, approximately 3 grams of suspected cocaine, approximately 15 grams of methamphetamine suspected, approximately 5 grams of crack cocaine suspected, and approximately 7 grams of MDMA suspected, and approximately 3 grams of suspected methamphetamine. And then there were, I think, approximately 5 grams of meth recovered in the toilet. That's also connected to that room downstairs.
Were there any firearms recovered?
Yes, there were 2 rifles located in the closet in the room that was identified as Mr. Bruce's bed.
Was anything, I think you had testified, but what was located in, you said a bucket of bleach?
Yes, so a bulk of the narcotics that were located, well, most of them, except for the ones that were located in the toilet, was located in a bucket of bleach. It smelled like bleach.
And Detective, based on your training experience, when you're finding these narcotics in this bucket of bleach, what, if anything, did that indicate to you?
That somebody was trying to get rid of those narcotics by throwing them in another chemical, possibly. Like I said, I think it was bleach.
The narcotics that were found, Detective, how were they packaged?
In plastic bags, I believe.
Were any of these drugs field tested?
So I wasn't part of the evidence crew. I know a few of them were, but due to the high rise of cases with fentanyl and this being, light substances that resemble fentanyl, we did not test them. We sent them to the GBI to be tested.
So going through the narcotics that were found, Detective, based on your training and experience, about how many arrests would you say that you've been involved in regarding narcotics with meth, cocaine, MDMA?
A lot.
And the narcotics that were found in the various locations, you mentioned that there was some methamphetamine found. Did it have the appearance, the look of what you've seen to be methamphetamine?
Yes.
And what about the cocaine? Did it have the look, the appearance of what you know to be cocaine?
Yeah, I'm going to object here. For one, those are leading questions, and for two, they're vague. They're just, does something that you said is cocaine look like cocaine? That's a vague question, and it's leading, Your Honor, so I would object.
I'm going to sustain the objection. The officer didn't testify about his knowledge, skill, and training and what he suspected the substance to be. But I think
Okay.
the question.
Okay, I thought he did. I'll go back and ask him additional questions. Detective, in your many years with the Clayton County Police Department in the narcotics unit, if you could tell us about your your training regarding the recognition of methamphetamine?
Well, and before the officer responds,
Mhm.
he has testified about his knowledge, skill, and training. And I think the way the question was worded is what Mr. Rogers is objecting to. But I have no problems with this officer testifying as to, based upon his knowledge, skill, and training.
Okay. Okay, well, I'll go back and ask him.
Okay.
So let's start with let's begin with the marijuana. And because I don't think I asked you about the marijuana in your the number of years that you've worked with the Clayton County Police Department, how many arrests would you say you've made regarding possession of marijuana?
I couldn't give you a number, but it's a lot.
And in those numerous arrests, you've had the occasion to view and I guess and feel what was marijuana.
Yes, it appeared to be a green leafy substance. Now, as far as the evidence that was recovered, so I'm also part of EOD, and I also go with SWAT on these search warrants. So when all this was being recovered and bagged and inventoried and all that, I had to head back to headquarters to get my vehicle and go back. So I didn't actually bag the stuff. Other detectives that were there actually bagged the items.
Okay. The marijuana that was located, was it over 1 ounce?
Yes.
And were you there to? Did it have the appearance of marijuana?
Yes, I actually saw the marijuana.
Okay. Were you able to determine? Did it have a smell of marijuana?
It did not.
Yeah. Again, I'm going to object just because, again, these questions, again, are both leading and vague. Does something smell like marijuana? I mean, number one, again, it's leading because what else is he supposed to say? And it's where one of the charges is possession of marijuana. But additionally, does something smell like marijuana? I mean, does grass smell like grass? If that's what our allegation is, it's still just, it's a circular question and it's vague. It doesn't really specify what these smells or these sights or these things are that distinguish them from anything else. Anything looks like something. That's not really an actual question. It's vague, like I said, and leading.
Well, and Mr. Rogers, I'm not going to sustain that objection. At this point, testimony doesn't have to be scientifically correct that this is marijuana, but the what the officer saw, what the officer thought based upon the officer's knowledge, skill, and training is enough to carry the day at the probable cause standard. So it's, so I'm not looking for a lab result or a test or whatever to say, yes, it was this drug, it was that drug. As long as the officer can testify about why the officer believed it to be what the officer believed it to be, that's enough to carry the day at this stage. Now, at trial, that's a totally different thing. But go ahead, sir. I'm sorry, Mr. Rogers.
Oh, Your Honor, my objection. Well, I'm sorry. You did say Mr. Rogers. I wasn't sure. Did you mean me, Your Honor?
Yes, sir.
Oh, I'm sorry, Judge. I thought you.
I did sustain the objection, but it sounded like Mr. Rogers had something else to say. So
yeah, yes, sir. I just want to be clear on what my objection is that for one, that is leading, and for two, that he's not testifying about what he observed or heard or smelled that is the basis for these conclusions. He's simply just stating conclusions, but he's not offering a factual basis. And that's what my objection is that this is just speculation with no factual basis being offered for the basis as far as the coloring or what is distinctive about these alleged substances. And that's what I'm saying, is that there's no factual basis. It's just the conclusion that I looked at this thing and said it was this. That's not a factual basis, Sean.
I'm gonna still not sustain the objection. I'm gonna give Ms. Freeman the opportunity to ask questions, and to a certain extent, in my opinion, it's kind of foundational to kind of get to where you're going. But you will have free reign to cross-examine this officer, and I will not interrupt you.
Thank you, Judge. And I believe the detective did testify about the appearance, as well as he testified about the smell regarding the marijuana. And so without having an actual scientific lab result, I believe, as Your Honor has stated, that would be sufficient for today's hearing, or at least in my professional opinion, it would be. And so I'll move on to the methamphetamine. Detective, you've testified about your training and knowledge and skills regarding the meth.
Excuse me, Ms. Freeman.
Yes.
More point of clarification than an objection, but I'm not sure if that's what the officer said. I kind of objected while he was answering. I think that was the last question, was about the smell of marijuana, and I don't think he quite was.
Oh, I thought he did, but Detective, just to make sure that Attorney Rogers heard you correctly, can you tell us about the smell of the suspected marijuana that was found?
So the suspected marijuana was a green leafy material. I actually was able to lay eyes on it while it was in the bucket, but I could not smell the suspected marijuana.
And do you believe that to be because of the bleach?
Yes, I believe it's because it was in whatever substance that was in that bucket that masked the smell.
Okay. And Detective, the methamphetamine, the suspected meth that was found, was this packaged in clear plastic bags?
So the suspected methamphetamine that was in the toilet did appear to be, in my knowledge and experience, methamphetamine, because they were clear/crystal shards, which is consistent with what methamphetamine looks in my knowledge and experience. And as far as the ones in the bags, as far as the one in the bag that was located in the actual bucket, I did not actually get to lay eyes on that because all you could see in the bucket was the marijuana. And again, I wasn't there when they took the drugs out of the bucket. So I couldn't really lay eyes on that, but I did see the marijuana and I did see the methamphetamine in the toilet.
Okay. The suspected meth that was found in the bucket, has that been sent to the GBI for testing?
Yes, they all have been sent to GBI for testing.
Okay. The cocaine that was located, was that located also, was that the suspected cocaine, was that located in the bucket as well?
Yes, everything except for I think it was the 5 grams of meth that were located in the toilet. Everything else, as far as what we could identify, was located in that bucket where the marijuana was.
Okay. And just to be clear, the suspected cocaine, were you able to lay eyes on the suspected cocaine? I
did when I put it in the evidence. However, I don't exactly remember because this was 2 months ago almost.
Okay.
No, it was a white substance, what I wrote in my report, but I don't remember physically. I don't remember exactly what it looked like.
Okay. Okay. The suspected MDMA, were you able to lay your eyes on that?
I did lay eyes on it. I laid eyes on everything once I put it in the evidence. However, I don't exactly remember what everything looked like besides what I wrote in my report.
When you referenced the suspected narcotics in your report, you would have done your report close in time to when the search warrant was executed?
Yes, my report was done, I think 3 or 4 days after.
Okay. And in your report, the suspected items, what did you list them to be?
I don't understand the question.
The suspected narcotics, What did you list in your report that these suspected narcotics were?
Oh, whatever I believe they were at the time. The marijuana I listed as marijuana, the cocaine I listed as cocaine, etc.
Okay. And just because we're recording, I don't want you to say et cetera. Other than the marijuana and cocaine, what are the other suspected narcotics?
The marijuana, the cocaine, the methamphetamine, the crack, the MDMA, and then the more methamphetamine.
Okay. Did you run a criminal history on Mr. Bruce?
Yes.
And were you able to determine if he was a convicted felon?
Yes, out of the Clayton County Superior Court on June 6th of 2019 for trafficking methamphetamine, I believe it was.
Did Mr. Bruce make any statements regarding any of the items found?
I did not get to speak to Mr. Bruce.
Did any of the other residents make any statements regarding the items found?
I didn't get a chance to speak to any of the residents. I think Detective Denard might have done that, the interviews.
Did all of this happen in Clayton County?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Mr. Rogers?
Thank you. Is it Officer Sebastian or is it Detective?
Hold on a second, Mr. Rogers. You're lagging a little bit. Can you start
Okay.
over?
Give me 1 second. I'm gonna see if I can. I might not be on. Let's see if I can get the Wi-Fi over. Is this any better?
Yes, sir.
I was saying, Officer Sebastian. What's the title? Is it Officer, Detective? What's the term?
Detective.
Detective.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Detective Sebastian. Are you the lead? I guess officer or detective on this case?
Yes.
And have you had a chance to review as far as documents, reports, body cam, anything that people would have filed?
I'm not sure anybody had a body cam except for maybe the uniform officer that was present. I know everybody else, to my knowledge, didn't have a body camera.
Can you say the last part? I don't know if it was on my end. I heard you say about you weren't sure about that body cam.
My knowledge, everybody that was on scene did not have a body camera except for the uniform officer.
Okay. And let me ask the uniform officer, would they have been part of the entry into the location?
No, the entry was done by SWAT.
Okay, so the things that we've been talking about as far as who's located where and what's located where, none of that's on video, is that correct?
Not to my knowledge, no.
And I know there was well, actually, let me back up. As it relates to the location, I think you said it was owned by Mr. Is it Longuepes or something like that?
To my knowledge, yes, I believe so.
And he was present also on that day?
Yes, he was there.
And there were by my count, I think there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, at least 5 other people, possibly 6 other people that day.
There were several people there, yes, sir.
And at the time that you are, well, when the search warrant was executed, I know there was discussion about people hiding. This search warrant, were any flashbang grenades or anything like that used in the execution of the search warrant?
I believe so, but I don't remember. I believe so, though.
And so, and again, if you don't know, you don't know, but Was this executed as a no-knock warrant, essentially?
It was a knock and announce.
And as far as the room that you say that Mr. Bruce was found in, the assumption is that it's his room because that's where he was found. Is that correct?
Yes, I don't remember what was found in the room that led us to believe that it was his room, but we were able to identify that as his room as well as he was found in that room.
And you said you don't know if anyone else was in the room, correct?
Yes, to my knowledge, I don't remember. Pretty sure it was just him, but I can't tell you whether it was just him or not.
And about what time, do you know, this search warrant was executed about 4 or 5 in the morning, something like that?
It was at 6 a.m.
6 a.m.
I'm just doing my third warrant by 6 a.m.
And so you say that these items are found in a bucket of bleach. Do you know, I guess number one, do you know who placed those items there?
I don't know. I just know that Mr. Bruce was found in arm's reach of that bucket, and he was hiding from the SWAT operators.
And just so we're clear, when you say he's hiding from the SWAT operators, these are the people who came in after throwing explosives into the area. Is that correct?
I don't remember if flashbangs were used, but the SWAT team is the one that made entry.
Okay. And again, just so I'm clear, this was forced entry, right? This wasn't like a knock and then somebody opened the door and let you guys in, right?
It was a knock and announce, but
right.
I believe they did have to breach because nobody came to the door, if I'm not mistaken.
What was the last part? I think you said you had to breach because no one came to the door. Is that what you said?
It was a knock and announce search warrant. However, if I'm not mistaken, nobody came to the door, so they had to breach the door.
And as far as you said, you don't know who placed the items in the bleach. Do you know when they were placed there?
I don't.
And let me ask, when we say a bucket of bleach, what you mean? Like just like, are we talking about like like one of those white buckets with the handle on it? Like what are we talking about exactly?
I believe it was plastic. I can't remember exactly what kind of bucket it was. I just know it was a bucket filled with a liquid, and it had the items that were located, the exhibits in that bucket with that liquid.
Okay. And did you say the items were packaged in paper bags inside of the bleach?
They were, so the marijuana was loose. Again, I saw the marijuana. It was loose in the bucket. And all the other items, I believe, were in each different item was in a clear plastic bag, maybe. But again, I'm not 100% sure. But I believe that each other item was separate, besides marijuana, in a clear bag, if I'm not mistaken.
And I know direct, you said that the marijuana was over an ounce. How many grams was it?
Approximately 83.
And I guess there was some discussion on direct about your knowledge, training, and experience as it related to drugs and things of that nature. Are you certified as a tester or examiner or anything like that?
No.
And when we talk about, well, let me ask this. This is, I really don't know. Presumably when people make arrests, as far as police officers that is, and charge people with drug offenses, oftentimes there are field tests involved. Is that correct?
Sometimes they're field tested, sometimes they're not.
And in this case, and I'm not sure what the situation was. Was there any field testing done?
Again, I wasn't the person doing the evidence, so I know 1 or 2 items were field tested, but a lot of them were not because of the risk of it being fentanyl. We sent it to the GBI to be tested by the GBI.
And when you say due to the risk of fentanyl, you just mean as far as like law enforcement contacting you or something like that? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, the fentanyl, if it was fentanyl, making contact with whoever's touching it, it could be deadly.
And so the knowledge, training, and experience that you have in identifying drugs, does that involve you doing any sort of physical or chemical manipulation or examination of a drug?
So the field testing kits actually do contain 2 chemicals. I don't know what those chemicals are. So if that's what you're referring to, then yes.
And let me ask this, so is there any sort of, absent the field test, is there any sort of training as far as identifying a drug other than just someone showing you a substance and saying this is such and such drug?
I don't understand what you're asking me.
What I'm asking is, one of the ways you would try to identify a drug would be a field test, correct?
Correct.
But
Hold on a second, Mr. Rogers. Maybe I can get you there a little bit quicker. I think, Detective, what Mr. Rogers is asking for is, do you have training in understanding pill form narcotics or cocaine or marijuana? And correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Rogers. Mr. Rogers, is that what you're asking, the question you're asking?
yeah, I think I was having a little bit of an issue because I heard your question, but it was kind of choppy, and I certainly didn't hear a response. But the question I kind of heard.
Okay, so there is no question, but there was no response. But you said you couldn't follow.
I said I just couldn't quite hear I think my reception, so to speak, I think it was kind of choppy. Like I actually just couldn't hear the words all of it.
Oh, okay. I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, the question you're asking of the detective is, what training has he achieved in, like, seeing a pill with a number on it, or seeing a pill in certain form, or green leafy substance, or cocaine, and how he's learned to identify.
Yes, sir. Essentially, yes, sir. That's what I'm asking about, is the knowledge, training, experience beyond field testing.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Can you answer that, sir?
Yes, absolutely. So as far as my knowledge and experience with the actual drugs, I was on the Tiger unit from 2016 to 2017. And then I was on the Tiger unit again from 2018 to 2020. And I've been in narcotics from 2020 until currently. Just seeing it and field testing it previously, as far as the narcotics like cocaine, methamphetamine, things of that nature. And as far as pill, we use an investigative tool called Pill Identifier. Basically what it is you pull up the tool and you put in the imprint and the shape and the color and things of that nature with that specific pill, and it tells you what it is. It tells you how it affects you and things like that. So that's how we identify the pills.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead, Ms. Rogers.
And I was just going to ask, is that some sort of database, or is that just something I can just pull up on Google? Like, is that some sort of like
It's
where?
a site,
I'm sorry, it's a what kind of site?
a website.
Oh, okay. Just like a publicly like I just go to Google and look up drugs.com, right?
It's pill identifier. I don't know if it might be, but pill identifier is what I asked.
You made you laugh on that one, Mr. Rogers. Pillidentifier.com.
I would, yeah, I'd like to know where we're getting our information from.
Okay.
With that being said, then, so essentially, let me ask this: there's no way other than it sounds like there's Google and there's a field testing.
We'll send the things to the GBI. Once we turn them into evidence, evidence sends it to GBI.
Okay. Okay, that's actually, I'm glad you mentioned that. That was another question I was going to have, is that you said you sent them off to the GBI, correct?
Correct.
All right, and once they get, does the Clayton County Police, do they ever get any kind of, I guess, grading of the field tests and charges they've submitted versus the GBI results? Is there any sort of report provided?
So I never get that report from the GBI. I don't know who gets it. I don't know if evidence gets it or the courts get it, but I've never gotten that report back.
So we don't know, and I know you can't speak. I'm not asking you to speak for the department, but I'm just asking in a general sense. There, to your knowledge, is there anything that says of 90 drug cases or 100 drug cases submitted by CCPD, 95 were as charged or anything like that? Do you get any kind of report like that?
I'm not sure.
And there's no like personal physical manipulation, like you don't rub it on your gums or put it on your tongue like they do on TV or anything like that, right?
No, sir.
Mr. Rogers, it's called an ORA Act. You submit that and you can get all the information.
I appreciate it, John. I might have to look into that.
Okay.
And so just so I'm clear, so there's nobody, to your knowledge, I think you said you either did not speak with or at least are not aware of any statements or admissions by any of the parties either that were at the house or Mr. Bruce himself.
I did not speak to anybody. I believe Detective Denard was the one that actually conducted the interviews. I did not.
And I think I am, if I could just have one moment, John, I'm close to the end.
Yes, sir. While you're thinking, I have a question for the officer, and I'm not asking you to reveal any sources or methods, but this house, as I've heard, it was a search warrant.
Yes, sir.
And so I'm assuming that there was investigative information that was developed that led to the decision to target this home, correct?
Yes, sir. There's a whole investigation behind the search warrant.
Okay. All right. And Mr. Rogers, I'm not gonna require the detective to divulge any sources or methods at this point. But that's the one question, Mr. Rogers, you didn't ask. So I thought I'd ask it for you.
Thanks, Yana. With that being said, I guess let's see. I think I had a couple of other questions. There's been some discussion about the marijuana and being able to and seeing it. Just so I'm clear, we have hemp and we have marijuana now in Georgia, correct? Both are recognized substances. Is that correct?
You broke up, Mr. Rogers. I couldn't hear you.
What I was saying is that you're aware that we have both hemp and marijuana as substances that are not both legal, but both are recognized substances in Georgia.
Yeah, I believe so, yes.
Is there have you received any kind of training in distinguishing hemp from marijuana?
No.
Um, at the moment, I think that'll be the extent. Well, yeah, I think that'll be the extent of my questions at the moment.
Okay. And Mr. Rogers, I tell you, you have a long road to hoe if you're gonna be arguing to me about somebody throwing hemp into a bucket of bleach. I'm just saying.
No, that's not quite where I'm going. Yeah, I was, but I do think it's relevant, but that's not quite where I'm going.
Yes,
It's part of it.
yes, it is relevant. It is. Miss Freeman, do you have any follow-up?
No, Your Honor, the state rests.
Okay. Mr. Rogers, do you intend on presenting any evidence?
No, so yeah, just an argument.
Okay, may this officer be excused?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, sir, you can stay if you want. If you want to go about your day, that's fine. But I'm gonna listen to argument. So, Ms. Freeman, I'm assuming you're waiving opening.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, Ms. Rogers, you're on the dance floor.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'll be asking for a dismissal for all of the charges for lack of probable cause, Your Honor. At this point, all I've heard is mere proximity. The fact that a person is in a house where contraband is found, or even in a room where contraband is found. The officers were in a room where contraband was found. That doesn't mean that they were in possession of it. It's not that easy, Your Honor. Especially when there's nothing else being alleged that ties Mr. Bruce to these items. People come forcing entry into a house at 6 a.m. Some people might hide. That's not the fact of somebody hiding when they're hearing people force entry into their residence. That I don't think that reflects of innocence or guilt. That's simply fear, which is, hopefully that wouldn't necessarily be my overwhelming reaction, but it certainly is a reasonable reaction to people forcing entry into your residence. Additionally, the officers don't have any information saying when those items got into the bleach, who put them in the bleach, how long they had been there, anything of the sort. The most that they have is that Mr. Bruce is in a room that, and I asked the officer if the basis for saying that it's his room is that he was found in the room. Again, there were officers in the room. It doesn't make it their room. That's not how it works. It's not that easy to say something is somebody's room just because. If I go into the lobby of the High Museum, that doesn't make it my lobby just because I'm in it. That's not how this works, Your Honor. There needs to be something else tying him to this location. Otherwise, we have mere proximity. So I would ask that all the items all the charges be dismissed for lack of probable cause. As it relates to
Wait. You said there's no evidence tying your client to this house?
Other than being in the location, Your Honor, they haven't produced any sort of lease, they haven't produced any sort of mail, any kind of document saying he lives there, has a vehicle registered there, nothing. At this point, all they say is that he was there. They don't claim that he had a bunch of clothes that said Anthony Bruce's favorite T-shirt on him or something like that. Like there's no basis to say anything other than that he was there when they executed a warrant. He was in a room where drugs were found. But at the end of the day, that's not enough in and of itself. There has to be something more than mere proximity to tie somebody to contraband. And I got case law to that effect. That Wofford is one of them. I can pull up a couple of others if you give me a moment.
I do understand the law as it relates to being near something. I do understand that. So
so that
we can debate back and forth about that. But I'm listening. I'm listening to you.
Okay. And yeah, I just want to make sure, if I say something, I like to, provide some sort of objective basis that people can refer to. And at this point, like I said, there's nothing saying that he has some sort of key that locks people out. There's been no evidence offered to tie him to this room other than that he was found in the room. Not that he was found in direct possession or found stashing items or found smelling of bleach or covered in bleach or had bleach stains on them or anything that would indicate that he had handled that bleach or anything of this nature. There's just no basis at this point other than that he was merely present in a room when a search warrant was executed and he hid after possibly flashbangs went off, because I don't want to overstate what the detective said, but possibly.
You call them explosive devices.
I would consider, well, if you've seen what a flashbang can do, if it hits you, it's not a walk in the park. I've seen what happened at least once to a child not Clayton County, but I think it was on the north side of Atlanta when they threw a flashbang and it went off in the
But
child's
the kid in the crib, I do understand that.
I would consider that explosive, Your Honor. I certainly don't want one going off in my face or in my house. And I'm probably gonna get it. You know, if one go, I think that's the whole point of it, is that it's intended to get a reaction out of people. It's not intended to be a cup of chamomile tea. And so that's what I would say about that, Charles. So a person reacted to an explosive being detonated in their house. For those reasons, Your Honor, I would say the fact that hiding when a bunch of
Mr. Rogers, you just know that you just said their house.
Oh, well, yes, sir. Anybody, in the sense that if you were there and a bomb goes off in anybody's house, if I was at your house and somebody throws a flashbang in it, I'm probably still going to hide. It doesn't really matter whose house it is. If I'm anywhere.
Well, Mr. Rogers, let me stop
Yes,
you.
sir.
Slow down. If you're in my car and there are narcotics found in the trunk, we're talking about equal access. It's my car and there's me and the passenger in the front seat.
Right.
Are you gonna tell me that it's the passengers' narcotics that are in my trunk?
Could you say it one more time, Your Honor?
Are you going to tell me it's the passengers' narcotics that are in my trunk?
It would depend on both the circumstances and who I represented, Your Honor.
Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Rogers. Go ahead.
I have to see what the facts say. If the facts on my side, then I'm going with the facts. If the law on my side, I'm going with the law. In this case, I think they're both on my side. And that, again, there's nothing that's tying him to these drugs. The fact that he is hiding in a bedroom or a room or whatever this place is, that does not make it his. Like I said, that's my point, is that short of something tying him to that location, showing he's not the owner, they haven't offered a lease, they haven't discussed, by saying that he rents a room there, that he had been there before that day, before that night, or anything of this nature. There's no basis to say that it's his. So for those reasons, John, I would ask that all the charges be dismissed for lack of probable cause as it relates to the substances that weren't tested or can only be eyeballed for whatever reason. I would say that's premature to charge Mr. Bruce or anyone with those substances at this point. The state, has the option of finding out what things are before they charge people with them. But at the end of the day, that's not what they chose to do here. And so they don't have a field test. All they have is suspicions about what these substances are. They're all in bleach, like they're wet. There's no basis to really make these allegations. They don't claim what they saw about the pills, the tablets that made them MDMA or anything like that. None of this evidence has been offered. There's been no description of the substances. It's just an officer saying, I went in here, I saw these things, and I called them these things. And this guy was near them. That's not enough of a basis at this point, I would argue, Your Honor, to charge somebody with possession of drugs merely for being near some items in a bucket of bleach in a room that nobody has tied them to other than them hiding after somebody throws flashbangs off and breaks into the residence.
You're not wrong, Mr. Rogers, but you're not right yet. I need to hear from Ms. Freeman.
Judge, well, my argument is going to be brief. And what I'm going to say is the testimony from Detective Spadjan certainly is enough for sufficient for probable cause for all of these charges. Mr. Rogers mentioned, a car of the defendant. Well, Detective Spadjan did testify that the car belonging to the defendant was at the residence. They didn't inventory it or anything, but he did testify as to his car being there. I believe that the defendant being in the room next to the bleach with the items, and that was the basis for the tampering with evidence, because it was believed that based on the circumstances and the training and experience that those narcotics were trying to be disposed of. That's our basis for the tampering with evidence. The firearms were found in the room. We heard Detective Sbajan talk about that the defendant had a conviction from, I think, 2019 for trafficking meth out of Clayton County. So that was the basis for the possession of a firearm by a convicted felon. Based on the training experience, the detective gave what I believe to be sufficient testimony regarding identifying narcotics pending the official lab results from the GBI. And he explained why they didn't field test the narcotics because of the increase in the use of fentanyl.
Yeah, spoilage in fentanyl and the
Is exactly, Judge. And so
skin and all, I understand the danger.
Right. And so with all of that being said, Judge, we're asking that all of the charges be bound over to Superior Court.
So, Mr. Bruce, I hope that you are satisfied with the arguments of your lawyer, Mr. Rogers. If I'm in trouble, I have a short list of 5 lawyers, and they include Ms. Pleasant and Mr. Rogers that I'd be calling if somebody is trying to charge me with something. As evidence has come out, and based on the testimony of the officer, I'm going to bind over all of these charges to the Superior Court of Clayton County. But Mr. Bruce, the state has the enormous duty to prove these charges beyond a reasonable doubt. And I hope that you've heard that you have a capable lawyer arguing in your corner.
Thank you, Judge.
Yeah, can we unmute Mr. Bruce, because I think he's trying to say something.
Well, just first, and I believe, did you excuse Detective Sbajan? Can he be excused?
Yes, I told him he can stay or he can leave if he wanted to.
Okay, thank you, Detective.
Okay, thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Mhm.
Okay,
Thank
okay.
you.
Have
And Judge, what I will say, we're still live on YouTube, but I didn't know if, unless I missed it, because I was before we started, I was working on paperwork. If you had already made the determinations regarding Curry, Office, and Milner.
No.
Okay.
I wanted that to be on camera with them having the opportunity to be present. Mr. Bruce, sir, is Mr. Bruce trying to say something?
Yes, sir. Could I speak, please?
Yes, sir. But Mr. Bruce, please don't talk about the facts of your case, okay?
We're still live on YouTube.
Okay, hold on. Let me